Welcome to the Slam and Jam. I'm your host, Andrew Schlecht. Go to theathletic.com/NBA show and get The Athletic for a discounted rate. Boy, oh boy, the NBA season has started. We got the in-season tournament just knocking on the door. We start tonight with that. But Alex, before we talk about that, tell me what happened in the NBA this week.
Well, Andrew, it all started last Friday night in Dallas, where the Mavericks were taking on the Brooklyn Nets. Cam Thomas, the Hoopers Hooper, scored 30 points in the game, but the story of the night was Luka Doncic. Luka hit 4 consecutive three-pointers in the final 3 minutes of the game, including an absurd hook shot banked in three-pointer to put the Mavs up by 3 with 26 seconds left. The Mavs are 4-0 and currently the only undefeated team in the Western Conference. On Saturday, Andrew's Wizards, as they are now known, picked up their first win of the season. Jordan Poole had 27 on 23 shots. Kyle Kuzma had 21 on 23 shots. That doesn't sound great, but fortunately for the Wizards, they were playing the worst team in the league, the Memphis Grizzlies. The Grizzlies are broken. They do not work anymore. After 2 subsequent losses, the Grizz are now 0-5, their worst start since 2002. If you're looking for a glimmer of hope with this team, you are probably wasting your time. But their next 2 games are in Portland. So listen, you split those. Now you're 1-6.
The Blazers have actually won games, though.
That's why I'm just giving them the split. Okay, I'm not saying 2-0.
Okay.
Give them the split. Now you're 1-6. Okay, Bismack Biyombo is here. Boom. Season saved.
Boom.
Sunday was the 20th anniversary of LeBron James's first NBA game, a game against the Kings in Sacramento. 20 years later, LeBron was back in Sacramento for another game against the Kings, and this one went to overtime, where Malik Monk scored 11 of his 22 points to help the Kings beat the Lakers 132-127. De'Aaron Fox, who returned in the fourth from an ankle sprain earlier in the game, had 37 points and 8 assists, while Anthony Davis led the Lakers with 30 and 16. On Monday at 11:01 p.m. West Coast time, Sixers fans' prayers were finally answered. James Harden, best known for doing whatever this is every 2 years, was traded from the Sixers to the Clippers for a package that includes multiple firsts, a swap, seconds, and most importantly, the return of process Sixer Robert Covington to Philadelphia. This is the 3rd installment in the Daryl Morey Harden trade trilogy. This was the hangover part 3 of Harden trades, with everyone wondering, how did we get here? Why are we still doing this? Why did they do more than one of these? Later in the week, at his introductory press conference, James Harden said, quote, "I'm not a system player. I'm a system." And given the well-documented track record of that system, how could you not be excited as a Clippers fan right now? On Tuesday, it was the first of 2 Suns-Spurs game that we are going to talk about. The first game, it looked like a blowout early on. I turned it off, Andrew. Frankly, I turned it back on later.
Everybody did.
Because the Suns led 63-45 at half. The Spurs looked like garbage, to be honest. I was regretting choosing them as my surprise team. But then they begin to claw their way back. And in the fourth quarter, the Spurs pull off a miracle. Down by 5 with 1 minute left, Victor Wembanyama made 2 shots in a row to close the gap to 1 with 6 seconds left. On the ensuing inbounds play, Kevin Durant caught the pass, and while trying to avoid tiny Trey Jones climbing all over him, he loses track of Keldon Johnson, who ran behind him, ripped the ball from Durant, and made a contested shot at the rim to steal the game, 115-114 for the Spurs. On Wednesday, the Toronto Raptors came into their game against the Bucks with a hilariously bad half-court offense. The Raps were scoring 77.1 points per half-court possession, a full 10 points per possession worse than last year when their half-court offense was also ranked dead last in the league. Good news for them, though. They were playing Milwaukee on Wednesday, who through 4 games has the 2nd worst defense in the league per cleaning the glass, only better than Andrew's Wizards. All 5 Raptors starters shot over 50% from the field en route to a 130-111 victory. The Toronto Raptors did that, 130 points. The win was a bright spot in what has otherwise been a disappointing 2-4 start for the Raptors. Their next game, a trip to San Antonio to play Victor Wembanyama, who on Thursday night was the star in a second straight classic between the Suns and the Spurs. This time, the roles were flipped. It was the Spurs who got out to a 27-point lead that the Suns completely erased by the 4-minute mark of the fourth quarter. Things were finally starting to make sense again. Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, arguably the best duo in the league. They're leading their team back. They're going to finish off these young Spurs. But no, Andrew, it's a new world we're living in. Victor Wembanyama, 19 years old, scores 10 points in the final 4 minutes. As quick as Phoenix had tied up that game, Wemby and the Spurs had extended the lead back out to double digits, winning with a final score of 132 to 121. Wembanyama finishes with 38 and 10, one of only 6 players in NBA history to score that many points as a 19-year-old. What a week it was, Andrew.
Welcome to Wemby's world, everybody. And you know what? Tonight begins another new era. The in-season tournament is here. And I thought I'd just walk everybody through real quick how this actually works, because I think some people are confused. And if you are, it's perfectly understandable. There are things about this that are confusing. So in each conference, there are 3 groups that were selected by win-loss records last season. They're all put together. All those teams will play each other over the course of the next few weeks. Those will be designated tournament nights. And so you will see these brand new courts, these very colorful courts that will be on display starting tonight. So that should be very interesting. The teams will also be wearing their new jerseys with these new courts. So there's gonna be a lot of color. There's gonna be a lot of different when it comes to these games. And so you can't not know that you're watching a tournament game. So the games start tonight. Each team will play the other teams in group play. Each team will get 2 home games and 2 road games. 8 teams will advance to the knockout rounds. So this is where I think people are understanding, like, this is where the tournament starts, is these knockout rounds.
Right.
It's the team that has the best record from group play, plus 2 wildcard teams. And the wildcard teams will be chosen from each conference, one from each conference with the best
They'll
record
be the
in group
Lakers and the
play.
Knicks.
Yeah, probably so. And these will be the 2 teams that finish with the second best record in their group. So I'm interested to see how that actually pans out. But you'll get 1 wildcard team from each conference that will join the knockout rounds. So the knockout rounds will be single elimination that begins with in-team market. So these won't be played in Vegas quite yet. So these quarterfinals will be played in market. And then the semifinals and the finals will be played in Vegas, December 7th and 9th. And then we will crown the winner of the NBA Cup. I don't know if there's do you get a banner? Do you think the teams will hang in-season tournament banners?
Definitely. Yeah.
Definitely. So it's gonna be fun. I was talking to some people that are like, man, I didn't realize how quick this was coming. Like the in-season tournament starting now. I feel like we barely even know anything about these teams. So I think the idea is to just hop into the season. You kind of sort through who your team is. Honestly, like this time between the end of October through December is when you find out what teams are good and what teams are bad and who's in the middle. Like this is a really important time during the NBA season. So to sort it out during an in-season tournament, I think is a really interesting idea. So that starts tonight.
The part of it I love is anyone who follows, European football, what they're doing in the Premier League. This is very similar to that. They have the Carabao Cup and the FA Cup, and those games start within a couple weeks of the season starting, and they're just kind of played midweek. The thing I would love to see long term is kind of what they do with the Champions League in terms of how they pick the actual groups, where it's completely random in some sense. And I would love to see it be where you could have a group with teams from the Eastern Conference and Western Conference. So you could have that experience of having a group of death where you just randomly get 5 good teams all together. And it's like, oh my gosh, 4 of these teams aren't going to make it. I think that would be really fun. And then the other thing they do with the FA Cup is once you get to the knockout stage, they randomize what the matchups are going to be and where you're going to play. And I think that would be really fun too, because maybe there is a team that you don't think of as good who sneaks through to that knockout round and everyone wants to play them. I think things like that going forward could make this a little bit more exciting. But I am excited, and I'm glad they're trying something new, and we'll see how it goes. they're still
Yeah.
regular season games, so they still count. So
Yeah,
it's like
they all still count except
watching
for the
already.
finals. Yes, I love it. I'm excited about it. I am an in-season tournament believer. I know a lot of people are not, but I love it. I'm very excited for it.
So we wanted to give some good news, bad news about some young players around the league. We're only 5 games into the season, and I think with a lot of the vets out there, if they start out struggling, they're not shooting well from three, you don't really worry about it because they have this long track record, and you can just look back and say, oh, they're probably going to regress to the mean. Same thing if someone's shooting or playing way above how they normally play. You can kind of guess, okay, something's a little weird here. This is probably going to go back. But when it's a young player, sometimes you don't know. And so it's very easy to overreact one way or the other. And so we wanted to look at a few young players and give we're going to give good news and bad news about all of these players. But it's up to you, Andrew, whether you want to start with the good news or you want to start with the bad news. So who would you like to start with today?
I'm going to start with one of my favorite young players in the league, Jeremy Sochan. I think he has had a very interesting first 5 games of the season. I'll start with the good news. He's averaging 10, 5, and 5 through 5 games, 5 assists per game, up from 2.5 assists last season. He played really well in that second game against Phoenix. 14, 5, and 9 assists, a block, only 1 turnover. I think he only had one. I think he had 1 turnover. 0 turnovers in the previous game against the Spurs.
Okay.
But generally, I like putting young players in positions to just get better and to kind of stretch who they are as a player. The Spurs aren't concerned this season with even their record. I don't think they're concerned.
They should
with anything,
be. I picked them as the surprise team. I wish they would.
They don't care. They don't care, Al. I think that what they care about is putting the right kinds of players around Victor Wembanyama. Now, we can transition to the bad news in that it's not worked great. Outside of last night, the Spurs offense has been vastly better with Trey Jones on the floor. You should go read Pounding the Rock. They put a really good article up about this particular topic, and I've written a lot about it already. I feel like almost everything they write about is either about Victor Wembanyama or like the fit of Jeremy Sochan at point guard. But yeah, you should go read their website because they kind of lay a lot of this out. The offense has been really bad with Jeremy Sochan as the lead point guard. According to Synergy, as a pick and roll ball handler, the Spurs score 0.4 points per possession, which 96% of the pick and roll ball handlers in the NBA are better than that. So he's been real bad as a pick and roll ball handler. Trey Jones has been the player to assist Victor Wembanyama the most on the Spurs. Like, something's trending here. Maybe they should have Trey Jones out here more. But to transition back to good news, I think it's a good thing. I'm not sure that Sochan's going to ever be like a primary initiator of the offense for the Spurs. But the more experience that you can get for guys like this, to put them in positions to feel a little bit uncomfortable so they can expand their game, I think it's a good thing. He's still really young. He's only 20 years old. And I actually think that these moments are really valuable for players like him, who he processes the game at a high level. He's a very smart defender. He's a very smart offensive player and passer. Shooting has not been great. He's only made 2 threes this season. He doesn't take a lot of them, but I think that that's something that needs to develop, and he doesn't get to the free throw line much. So he's got to kind of figure out what he is as a scorer, because he can have some nice nights scoring around the hoop. But as a passer and as a facilitator, I think it's a good move to just put him in a position to just be stretched. So I'm willing to be patient with this process. And I know that Greg Popovich feels very irritated about being asked about this all the time. I mean, he's pretty prickly when it comes to being asked about Jeremy Sochan being their point guard. So I think that's great. I love prickly pop, and shout out to Jeremy Sochan and Point Sochan. I'm still in on the experience.
Yeah, and it kind of felt like he was extending an olive branch in that second game against the Suns by closing with both of those guys on the court, both Trey Jones and Jeremy Sochan, which worked amazingly, because like Sochan's defense at the end of that game was awesome, and Trey Jones played a really important role as well. Yeah, I've just been enjoying this as kind of like a flashpoint issue among the Spurs fan base because I follow a lot
Yeah.
of Spurs people and they're all writing about it right now. They're all talking about it right
Oh
now, and
yeah.
there's very
Oh yeah.
strong opinions on both sides because yeah, if you just look at the stats, like it's obvious. Like yeah, of course, if you were just trying to win games, you would want Trey Jones more. I saw Bruno Passos put a screenshot up of like the best two-man units in the league right now, and
I know.
Wembanyama and Trey Jones are like plus 30 something. You know, like
Yeah.
they've been very good together, and it's been very obvious in every single stat. But
Yeah.
I get what you're saying that they're not they're on a long-term developmental track right now, and especially after last night, it's looking like a maybe longer-term injury for Devin Vassell. He injured his
Yeah.
groin last night.
Yep.
So that's going to set them back a little bit. So yeah, getting this like when else are you going to have a chance to do this? If you
This
want
is
to
yeah.
explore it, you have to explore it now.
Yeah. I mean, and also I think that long term, Trey Jones is a nice player. They're going to need to find like a long term guard though that has a higher
Yeah.
upside, which they could find in the draft. They could find via trade. I like Trey Jones. I think he's somebody that can be helpful. But like the truth is, like Victor Wembanyama with a competent, like steady hand point guard is going to be awesome. And if you can find somebody with a bit more upside, and Sohan can be in there as a passer and facilitator too, secondarily, I think they're set up really well for the future. So I just wouldn't sweat it if I were Spurs fans. I would kind of embrace what's in most things that are happening this year, especially with Vic.
So I'm going to start with Cade Cunningham, and I'm going to start with some good news. Through 6 games, Cade is shooting 41.5% from three on almost 7 attempts per game. Now,
Yeah.
coming into his draft, I remember Cade's shot being something that most draft experts were not worried about at all. It was almost seen as like a lock. Like Cade is going to shoot the ball well. At Oklahoma State, he shot 40% from three on good volume.
Hmm.
So no one was really worried about this. But then his rookie season happens and he only shoots 31.4% from three. He comes back in the second year. He only played 12 games because of the injury. He shot 28% in those 12 games. And for a team that desperately needs Cade, not just to shoot, but to be an elite shooter, this was a little concerning, through 80 games or whatever he had played. But in the early going, Cade looks like the shooter he was promised to be. And considering that Monty Williams is starting Cade with 3 absolutely non-shooters, this is
Yeah.
incredible news for the Pistons. The bad news is that Cade's overall efficiency remains an issue. He's
Hmm.
shooting only 41% from the field overall, which is actually in line with what he did in his first 2 seasons. The drop off has been on his 2 point percentage. And the main problem, if you dig into it, is his finishing at the rim. He's currently shooting 39% at the rim. Now, the good news there is that this kind of feels unsustainably bad. He's not going to shoot 39% at the rim, considering he shot 58% and 54% at the rim in his first 2 seasons. I went back and watched all of his 2 point attempts this morning. There's not that many. It didn't take me that long.
Yeah.
In general, I came away feeling pretty good about his finishing. In particular, the game against Chicago, he had a handful of really impressive rim finishes where he's bumping into a guy and still finishing over them. If something did show up, he does seem to maybe struggle with length a little bit. I thought Mark Williams for the Hornets had a couple of really nice plays against him at the rim. And then last night, Herb Jones for the Pelicans really played him tough. I think Cade was like 8 for 22 or 8 for 23 in that game. And there were a few plays where Herb got him at the rim. But overall, like I'm not worried about that. So if his rim attempts come back to where they were last season, all of a sudden his overall efficiency profile is going to look a lot better. And so if you believe in the shot, which everyone did, 2 years ago, it's really just his rookie season that made kind of throw people off a little bit. I think those efficiency numbers are going to start coming up, and overall, we're going to start feeling really good about Cade going forward.
Hmm. Yeah. He also he has a lot of poise. I still believe in him. I mean, it's only been just a handful of games for him. I think he'll figure it out. He does look good. Another player that I want to talk about, teammate of Cade Cunningham, Asar Thompson. We'll start with the bad. We'll start with the bad this time. The shooting is not there. It does not look good.
At
He's
all.
36% field goal percentage and 6% from three. It is
6%.
Yeah, 6.
Yeah.
He's 36, 6, 78 shooting splits. If you
Oh my
if you
gosh.
want
That is dangerously close to something I termed the singler zone a few years
yes.
back, which is when your 3 percentages don't add up to 100. You're
Yeah,
dangerously close, Andrew.
he's being buoyed by his free throw percentage currently, which
Yes.
he hasn't taken a ton of free throws. Shooting looks bad. However, everything else looks amazing. He athletically, I saw him in person the other day. He is a ridiculous athlete. He defended Shai Gilgeous-Alexander about as good as I've seen anybody, and he's a rookie. He only played a couple games, and he came in and held Shai to 2 of 8 shooting and forced 3 turnovers when he was
Yeah.
guarding him. He looked amazing against Shai. He looked amazing athletically. He can go and grab an alley-oop. He's a smart player. You can see that he knows how to pass and how to rebound and how to stay in position and set screens and knows where to be. I mean, his rebounding numbers are crazy. He's averaging 9 rebounds per game. In his debut, he had 13 rebounds. He looks great. Passing wise, he's averaging 4 assists per game as like a secondary guy. And even like, I don't even know if you even call him a secondary guy. He just knows how to play the game. Like stocks are way up. He just looks like he knows how to play. And I think the Pistons have found somebody that's going to stick long term. He does need to learn to shoot. He does need to figure that aspect out of the game because if you can't shoot 6% and be a starter in the NBA, but as a rookie to be able to come in and play physical basketball right out of the gate is really tough. And he's already doing that. He's already a good passer. I think that they have found somebody that can be another cornerstone with Cade for sure. I think he and Cade and Duren are great cornerstones now because of the issues that we've mentioned with the shooting. They need to go find some like real shooters to pair with these guys.
Yeah, every draft cycle, it feels like there's half the guys in the lottery where we're saying, if they can just shoot the ball, if they can just shoot the ball, this guy's going to be a star. When in
Yeah.
reality, most of those guys, even if they had a decent shot, they still probably wouldn't be stars. In the case of
Yeah.
Asar Thompson,
Oh,
he literally does everything else. Like oftentimes when you're
yeah.
talking about those types of players, they don't have the passing chops of Asar
Yeah.
Thompson. Like
Definitely
they might be
not.
really good
Definitely not.
defenders and they might be good rebounders, but he seems to have every other part of the game that you would want from him. And
No
so
question.
he truly is one of those players where if he does develop a shot, even if it's just solid, he will be a star because everything
Yeah.
else is there.
Even if his shot is just normal bad and not historically bad, then like
Yes.
we're in a great range of like stardom for Asar. So yeah, it's a great start for him. Also like patience with Asar. Like this, he's still very young. We're still just a few games in his career. Like there needs to be a lot of patience.
And hey, he is shooting 6% from 3, but he's taking them, which I do appreciate. He was over
Sure.
6 last night. How many
Yep.
times have we watched players who we know can't shoot and they're afraid to shoot it? They're hesitant. They're taking like 1 or 2 a game. Like if he's going to become a shooter, he has to be willing to shoot it in addition to actually getting better at shooting. So, yes,
Yeah.
he makes me feel
And
good.
that yeah, if he shot 6% the whole season but averaged 3 per game, I'd feel really good about that. I honestly don't care that much about I mean, I do care about the percentage. I don't care that much about it with him because confidence is like going to be the number one thing for him to improve. Because a lot of guys, they'll start out shooting. I mean, then like the disrespect with because of the percentage is so low starts where you have like guys like
Yeah.
Chris Paul that will just like, completely turn their back on guys and just like
Yeah.
look to the rim because they know that ball's coming off the rim. So he definitely needs to keep his confidence. He needs to improve his shooting, but I kind of believe in him. I believe in him and his brother to just be good pros.
So my next player, Tyrese Maxey. Now the good news is basically everything. I mean, Tyrese Maxey has been put in this new role as the primary ball handler. We were wondering, is James Harden going to come back at some point? Don't have to worry about that anymore. And he has checked off every single box you would want for someone moving into a new role like this. His usage has slightly increased. It's the highest of his career. but his efficiency has increased at the same time. He has a 65% true shooting through, their opening 4 or 5 games, however many it's been. He's been incredible, averaging 27 points per game, 5.8 assists per game. I went back and watched all his assists, and to be honest, like most of them are pretty straightforward passes, but he creates so many of those passes ended up being easy because he was putting so much pressure on the defense, especially like in transition. Like when he gets the ball, he is out sprinting. He's moving so fast. And a lot of times that would just lead to him being able to make a super easy pass out to someone like D'Anthony Melton or something for a wide open three. He's shooting 50% from three on 7 3-point attempts per game. That is incredible. He's getting to the line.
Player of the week, baby.
Player of the week. Getting to the line almost 7 times per game and shooting 93%. Jackson Frank wrote an article about Maxey for basketballnews.com and pointed out that he's already logged in his first 4 games 2 games with at least 10 free throw attempts, a feat that he accomplished just 3 times in his first 231 NBA games. So this is a different player that we're seeing. So this is good news. Bad news, Andrew, though. What could possibly be the bad news? Oh, one more. Actually, some more good news. More good news. Back to good news real quick. This team, the Sixers, for the past several years, have at times been a very tough watch. They just aren't a team that is necessarily been fun to root for. And Maxey has been like this shining star. You listen to Sixers podcast, everyone loves Maxey. And it's like Maxey, as long as Maxey is there, I can stand watching this team, following this team, because he brings so much joy. Having him in this primary role now completely changes the complexion of watching this Sixers team. They're so much more enjoyable to watch as a team. They're a feel-good team right now. I look forward to watching the Sixers in a way that I did not in previous seasons.
Yeah.
So that was
shout out Mike Muscala.
Shout out Mike Muscala. He brought Tyrese Maxey to the city of brotherly love. Okay, bad news. One that's not really bad news. It's just I would like to see more. He's taken 7 threes per game. Why? Why isn't it more? Why isn't it more? Do you know how many guys? It's not enough, Andrew. He's such a good shooter. Why is he only taking 7 a game? Do you know how many players in the league take more threes than Tyrese Maxey? What would you guess off the top of your head? More than 7 per game?
26.
That was very close. It's 23. 23. Okay. It shouldn't be 23. It should be like 10 max. He should be shooting.
But he's got to get downhill too. He's so fast.
No, shut up. Listen to the guys who are around 9 threes per game.
Yeah.
Zach LaVine, Tyler Hero, CJ, Max Strus, Keegan Murray, Larry Markkinen, Tim Hardaway Jr. Why is he not in that group? He can take 9 threes a game. He's amazing. And it's not like, I know he's not going to shoot 50% from 3 this entire season. But you look back, I mean, he shot like 43% from 3 last year. I just think there's still more to be gained here from Tyrese Maxey shooting. Okay, the other bad news, and this is more questionable as well, is just the uncertainty about the future. They make this James Harden trade. There are already reports that Philly plans to pursue a, quote, high-level guard.
I know.
Morey's been one of these guys in the past who hasn't really worried about fit as much. He's just like, I'm just going to get the talent in here, and it's going to work itself out. After watching Maxey in these opening couple of games, seeing what a Maxey-led Sixers team looks like, there's a part of me that worries that he is not going to worry about fit, and he's going to bring in a guard that just doesn't work with Maxey or doesn't allow Maxey to be his full self. Yeah. So that is just that's just, in the back of my head that I'm worried about that a little bit. Everything else, good news, great news, arguably. Great news. But I just hope that they prioritize Maxey and his development going forward this season and don't try to shoehorn in some other guy and then all of a sudden Maxey is back to the role he played last year. Because I do think there is a star level player here, but they have to give him that opportunity for that star player to emerge.
Yeah. Maxey's been amazing. Yeah. Without him, things would be very bleak in Philly.
Although they do have Kelly Oubre, so still watchable there. But you got the combination of Oubre and Maxey. That was a great night of basketball.
Yeah, that's a great night of basketball. I have another quick one. Good news, bad news. Jordan Hawkins, who has played a pretty big role, a lot of it due to injuries with the Pelicans. The good news, I saw him the other night in Oklahoma City. contributed in a lot of other ways other than shooting. He did take 13 threes, which I loved. He only hit 2 of them, but it's just like the ability to just take 13 threes is just awesome. I thought that was great. He contributed on the board some. He is real small. He's real skinny, but he's somebody that I feel like can kind of fill out a little bit. He can take different kinds of shots. He passed the ball well. He had a couple steals that were really timely too. He just knows how to play. And so I really like that pick for them. And I think like long term it's really going to pay off because they really need shooting around their main guys in Zion and BI. And I think he's somebody that's going to play really well. And the bad news is he just hadn't shot the ball well so far. He is a shooter. The stroke looks really good, but he's only shot 27%. I expect that to go up. I expect him to be like a 37 to 42% three-point shooter for his career. And once he does that, and if he's already contributing in other areas with his passing and his rebounding, I think that the Pelicans may have found another really nice role player. And when you get Trey Murphy back and you can play Jordan Hawkins with them, I think that they may have found like a really nice core to kind of move forward with Zion and BI that fit really well. Because what do you need? You need contributors all around, but you really need shooting. And I think that with the bad news of him not being able to shoot it well through his first 5 games, I just have to believe that's going to turn around. I think he's going to have a 9 for 13 game here where he just explodes because he can get those shots off. He's got a quick release. They're finding him. They believe in him. They continue to turn back to him in a tough contested game in Oklahoma City. So yeah, I think that he's somebody that I think will really thrive. And he kind of reminded me a little bit of his teammate CJ McCollum with the way that he was able to get some of his shots off. So I think he's going to be a really nice addition to the Pelicans, especially once that 3-point shot starts to fall.
Yeah, and I think the other good news is there were definitely concerns in the pre-draft process about his defense and how that would translate. Not the biggest guy out there, and I don't know if he's ever going to be a lockdown defender, but he competes defensively, and
yeah,
he tries hard enough where that's not going to prevent him from getting on the court. So I think that's another good sign for him.
Yeah, totally. Ultra competitor. I think that he's going to end up working out really nicely for them. All right, Al. After this quick break, we are going to talk about the Atlanta Hawks with Lauren Williams. We'll be right back.
All right, Andrew, it is time for the Wheel of Fandom, our weekly segment where we spin a wheel, it lands on a random team, and we become fans of that team for the next week. And this week, the wheel landed on the Atlanta Hawks. Now, the Hawks, they lost their first game of the week last Friday night to the Knicks, but guess what? They rattled off 3 straight wins, including impressive wins over Milwaukee on the road and Minnesota at home. The Hawks now sit at 3-2 with the 3rd-ranked offense and 17th-ranked defense, according to Clean the Glass. Andrew, if the Hawks are our favorite team, who is our guest?
We have Lauren Williams. She's the Hawks beat writer for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Lauren, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a little early for me, but we're here.
It is. It's kind of tough getting back into like this NBA rhythm. You know, we're just a few games in, and it's like, man, it's like, should I feel this tired this early on in the season?
I thought it was
feel
just
like a
me.
baby.
I thought it was just me. I'm glad it's not.
No, it's definitely not. And like the Thunder on like a big homestand. I've been to just a bunch of, you know, Thunder home games. I don't typically travel either for road games, but it's just like, man, just feels like a lot. But no, we're really glad that you could join. And this Hawks team is interesting in that they had a really eventful season last year. Kevin Huerter was traded before the season. Nate McMillan was fired after 59 games. There were constant John Collins trade rumors. And in the end, the season ended with a 500 record and a first-round loss in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Being around the team, how different does the mood seem compared to last year? Or do you think like some of the bad vibes talk last season was overblown?
Can it be a mixture of both?
Sure.
Where I feel like, you know, there are definitely things that weren't working, and I think you could obviously sort of see that spill out in all of the events happened. You know, as you guys mentioned, Nate McMillan being let go in February, Travis Schlenk stepping back in December. The rumor of, McMillan trying to quit at some point during the season, the idea of Nate and Trey having conflict. So yeah, I think it was a mixture of both of, yes, there were bad vibes around, but I think for the most part, it was still somewhat good, somewhat positive that they were able to kind of shift gears when they brought in Snyder. I would think that a lot of the players they still were a solid unit. It's just hard when there's so much chaos from the top down to actually have a productive season. But I think they still liked each other, still enjoyed each other. It's just hard when you're losing, and everything winning cures everything, if we're being honest. But this
Mhm.
season, I do think we can say there is a remarkable change in the vibes, and I hate to keep using that word, but the vibes are good. Even after those first two losses, they lost to Charlotte in their home opener. You guys just mentioned the Knicks on Friday, they lost to them, but the mood didn't really shift that much. There was still a lot of optimism. You could still tell that these guys were really excited to play with each other. They brought in veterans like Patty Mills, who is known for his vibes,
Yeah.
and Wesley Matthews, who has been quite a rallying force for a lot of these guys on the floor. Even though he
Mm.
hasn't been able to kind of play, he's been that good locker room presence. And as much as John Collins tried to be that guy, it's a lot different when you have two guys who have 15 years, 14 years before they came to the Hawks of experience in the NBA. A guy like Patty who knows what it takes to win a championship. He did that with the Spurs and played some pretty good minutes during that season for them. So I think when you have a lot of guys who have positive energy, it eventually spills out. And it seemed like, during training camp, they were having a lot of fun, even though it sounded like there were a lot of hard practices that were happening. But the word that they kept using was just energy. There's just a lot of energy. And I think, one, the newness of having Quinn have a full off season with them kind of added to that. You have the novelty of him implementing his system and what he wants out of this team. Both Trey Young and DeJounte Murray talked about how much they wanted to win this season. They didn't really care about, stats, so to speak. Obviously, guys are going to care about that in some shape or form. But I think the number one priority was for them to win games. And I think we're seeing that kind of spill over into the rest of the roster. And so vibes are good, to answer your question in a very long roundabout way.
So one of the early season surprises for the Hawks has been the play of Jalen Johnson. He's
Mhm,
averaging 13, 8, and 2 while playing over 28 minutes per game in his third season.
mhm.
How unexpected was this leap from Jalen, and where have you seen the biggest improvements in his game compared to last season?
Yeah, I don't think it was unexpected at all. I think the expectation was that he would take a big leap forward, particularly because I think he gave the Hawks enough confidence toward the end of the season. He instilled a lot of confidence in Quinn Snyder. When he came in, I mean, Quinn was singing his praises almost as soon as he walked through the door. But yeah, I don't think it was unexpected that he would be able to put up performances like he has so far in these first 5 games. I think the biggest leap is that he has the confidence of the rest of his teammates, and that's kind of spilling through. But I think what we'll continue to see from Jalen is just that he has so much versatility. He can create
Mhm.
for others. We see him have an amazing connection with Onyeka Okongwu, and I think the fact that they're kind of best friends off the court kind of helps that. But
Mm.
we're seeing him make plays for other people, Sadiq Bey, Clint Capella. We're seeing him facilitate for guys like Trey Young and DeJounte Murray, as he gets uses to kind of sag off of some of those guys. So I think it's just amazing to see what having the confidence of everyone in the organization does for a guy. And I think we're seeing that spill out. But I also think it helps that he had a little bit of a practice session with one of the greats, LeBron James, over the summer. And so I think we're just kind of seeing, this kid mature and grow up and really step into who he is as a player.
Yeah, you mentioned Okongwu. He signed a
Mhm,
4-year, $62 million extension with the Hawks this last week. Okongwu's minutes have increased in each of the Hawks' first 5 games, while Clint
mhm,
Capella's have decreased.
mhm,
Capella's is still the starter, but how do you think the Hawks will handle the center position going forward this season? And do you expect there to be a Clint Capella trade at some point?
I honestly would say I wouldn't be surprised if they move Clint this season, but I still don't know if I see that happening just yet. It just depends on what the market is and what the return is.
Mhm.
I think it is significant that Onyeka has been closing a lot of the games. I mean, in the past, we see, Clint Capella being the guy that coaches tend to turn to, but I do think Clint adds a lot of value to this team still, particularly when there are matchups that aren't necessarily favorable for Onyeka. We know that Onyeka has some trouble going up against Jonas Valanciunas and some of those other bigs who just have a lot of size to them. And even though
Mhm.
he's a very strong dude and he can really protect the rim, especially down low, there are just some matchups that aren't good for him, and that's where Clint is kind of gonna come in. And I think we'll see some, interesting things where in that Milwaukee game, they kind of experimented with Onyeka at the 4 and Clint at the 5. So, that's something that they've talked about is possibly getting some minutes for Onyeka in that position as a power forward. And obviously it's out of position for him. It's not quite, you know, the best matchup sometimes, especially when you have some of those smaller guards who are trying to attack the basket. You can see where he's like overthinking a little bit. He still gets into foul trouble early in games. And so I think there's still some growth with Onyeka, and that's where the value of Clint is that you have a guy who, knows the game, who has the experience and who doesn't run into foul trouble. And you knew that, and you need that, especially because if you do move on from Clint at this point of the season, the guy that would be backing up Onyeka in some of those minutes would be Bruno Fernando. And that's not a knock on
Mhm.
Bruno. He does have, some skills and he's definitely in the NBA for a reason, but we've seen him have some trouble and he just hasn't been able to kind of get into a rhythm. So I think, the Hawks do definitely still need Clint, as I mentioned, particularly for bigger sized matchups. And I do think in the future, that's something that they're going to explore, particularly because he only has 2 more years on his contract. So, maybe they
Mm.
finish out the year with Clint or trade him in the offseason because he'll be on an expiring contract. It's a little bit more uh, enticing for other teams. But I think the fact that we saw Clint's name kind of floating in the trade rumors, he might be the next John Collins of this team that's constantly in the trade rumors between him and DeAndre Hunter. Those might be
Mhm.
those guys that kind of constantly see their name in the news or in reports or anything like that.
So I wanted to ask you about AJ Griffin because he was a
Yeah.
really nice surprise for the Hawks in his rookie season. He averaged almost 20 minutes per game,
Hmm.
and his shooting in particular was desperately needed on a team that shot the third fewest threes per game.
Hmm.
5 games into this season, however, Griffin is averaging 9 minutes and has not
Yep.
played more than 12 in any
Yeah.
game. What do you
Yeah.
think are some of the reasons behind his smaller role early on in this
Hmm.
season?
I think one of the big things is that Quinn Snyder is known for keeping his rotations a little bit tight.
Hmm.
And I think he really prides guys that have a strong defensive presence. And that's not to say that AJ can't defend at all. I just think that you can see the inexperience with him being a second year guy and him still kind of getting into trouble as far as not being in the right spot at the right time. His on the ball defense has been really great. He's really good in one-on-one situations, but off the ball, you can see him sometimes go to overhelp in situations and he leaves a guy wide open and then he has to kind of close out late and it winds up being a made three-pointer. So I think the biggest thing for him is taking a step forward defensively. And that's kind of how, he'll earn more minutes on the floor. But as you guys mentioned, his shooting, Quinn has brought up that, in situations where they need that, he will bring AJ. And I think, the more he can consistently hit shots, I think that's going to be the way that he kind of cracks into the rotation a little bit more. But he just hasn't quite been hitting them as much as we saw last season. And then when you
Hmm.
couple that with some of his defensive struggles, it's kind of hard to, in some ways, justify putting him out there, particularly with how Quinn wants to play the game. He wants them to score off of their defense. And if you're not getting takeaways, well, you're putting them in a bad position because they do oftentimes let their offense dictate their defense as opposed to the other way around.
So Trae Young and DeJounte Murray
Mhm.
had a slightly negative net rating in their minutes together last season. Going into year 2 of this backcourt, what have
Mhm.
been your early impressions of how they've been playing off one another?
Yeah, I think you can really start to see the idea of sacrifice. I think that was kind of one of the big things with them last season. It was okay, you score, I score. When Trey's not on the floor, that's when I go and get my minutes or my stats, excuse me, my shots, my score, my assists, all of that. Whereas this year you really see them thinking about the unit as opposed to themselves. And Quinn wants a very unselfish style of basketball. And I think we're seeing that kind of manifest between the two, particularly them feeding the person who's the hottest. We saw that in that Minnesota game with DJ going off in that third quarter, having 22 points, a perfect third quarter. And they just fed him. And I think the more that they do that, it trickles down to the rest of the guys. They had 8 players in double figures on Sunday when they played the Milwaukee Bucks, and I think that's just kind of how they want this team to play. And I think because of the attention that those two command from defenses, it just works in the Hawks' favor if they can continue to play unselfishly as opposed to trying to go ISO in situations where it doesn't necessarily dictate that. They want them to kick the ball out to a guy like DeAndre Hunter or Jalen Johnson. Obviously, it helps that those two guys are actually hitting shots early in the season.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest thing that I'm seeing so far, and I'm pretty pleased with, is just kind of the unselfishness, as I mentioned. Obviously, you want to see Trey hit more shots than he has been. He's been pretty inefficient so far in these 5 games, but I think if I could take away one positive, and I mentioned this to someone yesterday, but he was pretty good as far as not doing those usual chucking up shots early in the shot clock on Wednesday when they played the Wizards. He ended the night 7 of 18, which I know it's not huge, but for Trey, not necessarily inching into the 20s in terms of field goal attempts, I take a positive away from that because that tells me that he's one, reading the game a little bit more appropriately and not forcing the situations. Two, he's putting a lot more trust in his teammates to knock those shots down or find the right spots. And I think it does help that he has guys like Sadiq Bey who can take shots from outside, but can also bully his way into the paint and kind of just like bulldoze guys over just because of how strong he is. So I think that the fact that the Hawks do have a few more options that can make things happen on the offensive end has kind of maybe taken some of the pressure off of Trey to feel like he has to chuck shots up or do things on his own.
Well, Lauren, thank you so much for answering all of our Hawks questions.
Yeah.
But it is now time to play Andrew versus the Beat, our weekly trivia show where Andrew goes head to head against an NBA beat writer. This week,
Okay.
Lauren Williams, Hawks beat writer at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Now, Lauren, how this works,
Yeah.
I came up with 8 questions,
Okay.
all related to the Hawks. Some are easy, some are hard. You'll choose a number between 1 and 8. It'll correspond to a question. If you get it right, you'll get at least 2 points. If you get it
Okay.
wrong, Andrew will have a chance to steal for 1, and then we'll go back and forth until all the questions have been asked and answered. So to start us off, Lauren, what number would you like between 1 and 8?
Let's go in the middle. Let's do 4.
Question number 4. According to Cleaning the Glass, which Atlanta Hawk currently has the best on-off number with a plus 21.1?
Ooh. I feel like that's Jalen Johnson.
Lauren? That is correct for 2
Oh.
points.
I just knocked my headphones off if you guys can see this.
Out of excitement.
Out
of
of jubilation for getting the question right. I'll
Yeah.
go
All
number
right,
1.
Andrew. The board is your number 1. Here we go. Okay,
Ooh.
DeJounte Murray. I almost called him
Maury.
DeJounte Murray scored 41 points this week in a win over Minnesota. Who was the last Hawk, other than DeJounte or Trae Young, to score 40 points in a game?
As a Hawk?
As a Hawk.
Okay. Boy.
Who's the last
That's a
Hawk
tough
to
one.
do it?
That is a tough one.
Boy, it doesn't feel like anybody that's on the current roster would have done it. Is it John Collins?
That is incorrect, Andrew.
Yeah.
Lauren, you have a
Yeah.
chance to steal for
I was
1
gonna
point.
say, if it's somebody on the current roster, my bet would have been on Bogey because he would have gone off for threes, but I feel like that's
Yeah.
not it.
Is that your final
Yeah,
answer?
that's my final answer.
Lauren, that is also incorrect. The correct answer was Dennis Schroeder.
Oh.
So it's like been a minute.
Yeah.
It's been a minute. It was
It's
2019.
been a minute. 2019.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay,
Yikes.
so Lauren, you're up to zip and you have control of the
Okay.
board.
Let's do 6.
Question number 6.
Question
There are
number
only
6.
8 active NBA coaches with more career regular season wins than Quinn Snyder, and we're going to try to name them all. Now, how this works, Lauren, you'll
Wait.
give me a name, then
Okay.
Andrew will give me a name. We'll go back and forth until one of you stumbles. So this is the active NBA coaches who have
Mhm.
more
Oh
career
my
regular
gosh.
season wins than Quinn Snyder. So where would you like to start, Lauren?
I'm gonna start with Popovich.
A great guess because he's number 1 on this list. Yes,
Yeah.
that is correct.
Yep.
All right, Andrew.
How about Eric Spoelstra?
Another good guess. He's number 3 on the list. Back to Lauren.
Okay, current. Let's go with. Sorry, I'm going through the coaches. Rick Carlisle.
Great guess. He's number 2 on the list. You all have gotten the first 3 names on the list.
Okay.
Andrew, where would you like to go next?
Steve Kerr?
Steve Kerr. There you go. Number 5
That's a good
on
one.
the
Wow.
list. So you've gone through half the names. There are 4 active NBA coaches left who have more regular season wins than Quinn Snyder.
More regular season wins. Let's go with Tibbs.
Tom Thibodeau, number 4 on the list.
Okay.
Very
Wow.
impressive. You all have got the top 5 names. There are 3 names left. Andrew,
3 names left.
do you have
What about
another
Michael
coach in mind?
Malone?
Michael Malone is
Mm,
number 7 on the list, which means there are 2 coaches left.
Okay.
Whew.
And if you guys get
There's a
all
lot
of
of-
them,
of
Lauren would
young
get 2 points,
coaches
Andrew
out
will get 1
there.
point. A lot of coaches. So there are 2 coaches
There are
left
a
who
lot
have
of coaches.
more career regular season wins than Quinn Snyder.
And it doesn't have to be with one team, right? Because I
Correct.
guess Tibbs. Okay. Let us guess. Wow, I'm getting stumped. Shot in the dark. No, I'm not gonna guess that.
Okay, I do want to know who your shot in the dark is eventually.
Let's go with Steve Clifford.
That is incorrect,
Ah,
which means
dang.
Andrew gets the 1 point. The other 2 names, any guesses, Andrew?
Mike Brown?
Mike Brown was 1. He's number 8.
Ah,
And then Frank Vogel.
Vogel. I was like
These are
thinking
the
like
Pacers
Vogel
names.
or Lou. I couldn't
yeah,
decide.
I was thinking. I thought Vogel, but I didn't. Mike Brown was my dark. My shot in the dark was Dagnall. Is that how you say his last name? With OKC.
Dagnall.
Dagnall,
Yeah.
Yeah, just because he's been there for so long, I was just like, maybe that's
He-
him. But
he had too many bad teams Too
Yeah.
many
Yeah.
terrible teams.
Too many. Exactly. That's why I was like shot in the dark.
Yeah.
There were actually like 3 guys who were within 20 wins of Quinn, like right behind him. I think Tyler
really?
was one of them.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it was very close.
Like,
Okay,
I-
Andrew, you've cut the lead in half and you have control of the board.
Ooh.
Number 2.
Question number 2. According to Business Sport Journal, the Hawks mascot, Harry the Hawk, is the second highest paid mascot in the league. Who is the highest paid mascot in the NBA?
Oh, I think I know this one.
Is this Benny the Bull?
Andrew? That is incorrect. He's number 3.
Oh,
It's-
really?
Yeah, it's got to be
Lauren,
not. I think it's the Denver Nuggets mascot. Rocky? No, is that his name?
Lauren, that is
It's a
correct.
Denver. Can I?
It is
Okay.
Rocky.
Wow.
I was like, I know this one.
Rocky's right too. Rocky's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah,
How
Harry
did you
the
know
Hawk,
that? How did you know
600K.
I
I
actually, yeah,
remember it
very
coming
mixed-
out.
yeah, it came out, but also shout out to James Edwards from The Athletic. He did an article
Yeah.
on the Denver Nuggets mascot being like the dad of the Pistons mascot. And somehow I feel like that came up in there that he was one of the top paid mascots. So I think, yeah,
That is the
That's how I
most
know.
James Edwards story ever.
he's good at what he does. You know?
He is. I saw him Monday. Got to have a meal with. He's so great. Shout out
He
to James
is.
Edwards.
Shout out to James Edwards.
Okay, Lauren, you have regained your 2-point lead, and now you have control of the board.
Let's go with 7.
Question number 7. Okay. What is Patty Mills' career high in points for a game? Now, before you answer, you get to
Oh,
choose who answers first. So you can make Andrew answer, and then you can go higher or lower, or you can answer, and then he can go higher or
Okay.
lower. However, if you make Andrew answer and he gets it exactly correct,
Yeah.
he will get a bonus point for that. So something
All
to be
right.
aware of.
Patty Mills' career high. I'm gonna go 35.
All right, Andrew, the bar has been set at 35. Would you like to go higher or lower?
Oh, that's a great number. Did a really good job. I'll say higher.
Lauren, you were 1 off of the
Ah.
correct answer. And the correct answer was 34, which means you get the point,
No!
Lauren.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Wow, that's
Dang.
very impressive. You were 1 away from getting
One
a bonus point.
away.
Does not happen that often.
Yeah. Has
Whew.
it ever happened? I don't know if it's ever happened.
It happened once. For sometimes when I say like most steals in a game, it's like it can only be so many. So you can
Yeah.
kinda
Yeah, it's
get
like
close.
7. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Andrew. It's not looking
Man,
great for you. You're down
This is
5-1. There's
this is
3
looking
questions
really
left.
bad. Number 3. Number 3.
Question number 3. Okay. According to HispanosNBA.com, the Atlanta Hawks are the 4th shortest team in the NBA by average
Hmm.
height. Name one of the 3 NBA teams that is shorter than the Hawks.
Oh my. That is an impossibly difficult question.
Yeah.
No, it's not. No, it's not. Just think of all the teams.
So,
Who's got a
like the
bunch of short
Thunder
guys?
definitely like come to mind first, but the problem is they don't have any like really short guys.
Mhm.
Yeah, you need
Like
you
they
need some
have
really short
they don't
guys
have
to
any
bring down
really
the
tall
average.
guys, but they don't have really short guys either. So like who are the teams that have a lot of really short guys? I think is a
And
question.
it's all
that I'm
relative, right?
thinking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, yeah. Who's the team that has the most normal sized guys? Who would that be? Goodness, Al. That's
You
such
You
a
only have to
ridiculous
get one.
question.
I've been very nice on this question. There's 3
Yeah,
of them. You just
sure,
have to name
sure.
one. That's very generous of me.
Mhm.
Oh, I just saw New Orleans a couple days ago, and they have a lot of shorties on their team, so I'll just say them.
Andrew, that is incorrect.
Oh.
Lauren, you have a chance to steal. Any
Um,
teams you've been thinking of?
Yeah, I was thinking
She's
The
gonna nail this. I can
Knicks?
just feel it. She's
The
just
New
gonna
York
nail it.
Knicks. That is correct.
Ah,
I knew it. I knew she was gonna nail. I knew like this is gonna be one of my most embarrassing performances on Andrew versus the Beat ever.
I was like, I
Yeah, the
feel
other
like Jalen
teams.
Bronson kind of tilts
I think the
you.
only one I would have guessed was Golden State because
Yeah.
like Steph,
That was
Chris
one that
Paul,
Yeah, that was
yeah,
one I
that
had
one.
there.
I feel dumb in hindsight for not.
And then
saying
the
And then,
Suns.
the Bulls. The
The
Bulls are the other team.
Bulls.
Caruso, Kobe
thought about the
White,
Bulls.
Javon Carter.
Yeah,
Yes,
Javon
the short
Carter,
guys.
Kobe White. Yeah, the normal size guys.
Yeah.
Man.
So it's like Bulls, then you said Golden State, then
Golden State's the shortest, and then Knicks, and then Bulls,
Oh.
and then
Mm.
Hawks.
Mm,
According
you can see,
to
I can see the
Hispanios
shortest
NBA.com.
team in the league tonight.
Woo.
So
Live.
exciting.
In
Love it.
person. Cannot
What a
wait.
treat.
Shortest team in the league.
Okay,
Okay.
Lauren, you are destroying Andrew. It's 6-1.
Let's-
And there's still 2 questions left.
Let's go with 8.
Okay.
Number 8. Lucky
this
number
one's
8.
A little
Is-
confusing, so pay close attention. Who is
Okay.
the only player on the current Hawks roster who played for the Hawks as a rookie but has not played for Atlanta his entire career?
Oh. Well,
That's a rookie.
I feel like that's got to be Bruno Fernando.
That is correct for 2 points.
that was one that
All
I
right,
knew.
Andrew.
And
Unfortunately for you, Andrew, it is currently 8-1. This is one of your biggest defeats of all time. However, you can make it a little less bad by getting.
is this an 8
question.
point? Is this are there 8 points here on this question?
Let's check here. No, there are only 2.
Okay.
So you
All
can
right.
you can close the gap though, 8-3, and then who knows what happens after that? The game's over. Actually.
Yeah.
Okay. Last question, Andrew. Last season, where did DeJounte Murray rank on the Hawks in total free throws?
In total free throws.
Yes.
I know it's low because I saw it recently. I didn't see his ranking, but I saw
Yeah.
like his free throw totals were really low. So I just have to give you a number.
That's right.
Oh
Rank.
boy. See, like 5th?
Andrew, that is incorrect.
Oh, dang, that
Okay,
was my
Lauren, you can
guess.
get one more point. You can finish
Hmm.
this off with a bang. Ruin Andrew's Friday going into his weekend.
One, let's say, two. No, it's 2. I'm gonna go one below Andrew and say 6.
Should have gone one higher because it was 4th behind Trey,
Fourth.
DeAndre Hunter.
Yeah, I
and
was trying to-
Okongwu.
See,
But
that's
it
funny
doesn't
because
matter because Lauren, you are the victor this week, 8-1 in Andrew versus the
Yes.
Beat. Congratulations.
That was I haven't been beaten that bad in a long time. That it's a very humbling moment to
I take pride in
get
that.
destroyed in trivia like that.
What is your like record against Beat the Beat?
So I have planned to do this. He started off like 0-11, and then
was
he
really
went
bad.
on a crazy streak. And in general, Andrew's like very strong at trivia now, and it's actually a surprise when he gets beaten. So this is you should be proud of this.
I'm
This is-
very
should- yeah.
proud. I love
It's
trivia.
been a minute. Yeah, I haven't been blown out like this in a long time. Hey, go read Lauren at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Tell everybody your Twitter handle and anything else that you would like people to know about your work.
Yeah. So my Twitter handle is Williams Lauren L. I was cursed with a very common name, so it made it really, really hard to settle on an actual handle. I think I went through at least like 5 different tries because they also limit how many characters you can have in your Twitter handle. If you did not know
Mhm.
that, but I would just say, like, I have really enjoyed covering this team so far. Of course, there's some nights, being a beat writer, you're like, oh, they're playing, the Wizards on a Wednesday night. Great. But yeah, I'm just hoping to continue having fun. Gonna be in Mexico City for that game against the Magic,
Yeah.
which will be really
That'll
fun.
be fun.
And that's next Thursday. So that'll be cool to experience that and cover them in an international setting because it's fun being outside of the country.
Yeah.
And you do
That's
a
amazing.
Hawks podcast as well?
I do the Hawks Report. It's not very consistent right now, just because there's a lot of stuff floating around here at the AJC. They're hiring like crazy, so there's like a lot of confusion with everything. But yeah, the Hawks Report with my handy dandy trusty producer, I call him Daniel Salerson. He actually used to cover the Pelicans, who the Hawks play on Sunday.
Yeah. I know
Yeah,
him. Yeah,
yeah.
he's great.
So it's a fun time. He knows his stuff with basketball, so it's really fun being able to talk hoops with him and just talk about the Hawks. And hopefully they won't be a 500 team this year because they'll be better than that.
Yeah. Well,
But
thank you again for joining us, Lauren, and go check out all of her work. And we will talk to you again next time. Thanks, Lauren.
yeah, thank you.
All right, Andrew, that was Hawks week. What a week it
Oof.
was. Hey, 3-1 is the wheel.
That was
helping out
great.
teams? We'll see.
Shout out to the wheel.
Shout out to the wheel. Okay, so we have 28 teams. Who could possibly be the team of week 3? Obviously, a lot of teams on here, just not
There's a
Portland,
lot of
Atlanta.
teams.
So
Yep.
let's see who we get. The wheel is spinning. The wheel spinning team this week will be Knickerbockers.
Wow, the
right,
New
the New York
York
Knicks.
Knicks. I mean, a very interesting team.
Yeah, let's see who they're playing this week. Wow, a lot of national TV games tonight at Milwaukee.
Wow.
Then Monday night against the Clippers, probably going to be Harden's first game, possibly. That's great.
Yeah.
And then Wednesday against the Spurs on ESPN.
Wow.
That's a great 3-game stretch
Hey,
right there.
That is. They needed the wheel, honestly. Like they need the luck of the wheel to bring them through.
They do.
Hey,
Yeah, that's a tough little stretch.
That's a tough stretch. Hey, if you will leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, we will read it on the show. Just like this one from Z Vobernick. 5 stars. Random day slam and jam. He said, "Congratulations on giving this me giving you a 5-star review. I don't even know what my username is because I don't own an Apple device and I had to use my work phone for this. I'm probably going to get fired now, and it's definitely your fault. You two are awesome. I love the show. Now back off. All the love, Zach V." Thank you, Zach, for sacrificing yourself for the good of the show. This one comes from Greece. This comes from Sirius. Saturday, Friday, or any day of the week, Slam and Jam was and remains funny, informative, and generally amazing. From Nikos from Greece. Wow. Thank you so much for that review. And then this one comes from Wizards Trash Talker. He says, "The Friday Slam and Jam surprise team picks surprise us again." He says, "Dear Andrew, as much as I respect your bold pick in choosing the Wizards to be this team's surprise team, as a Wizards fan, I resent it. We finally torn it down. Winger, Dawkins, and Schlenk are building for the future, not for 35 wins right now. The 34 to 35 win seasons of the past 3 years are now in the rear view. We finally have a losing team. Taj Gibson, Mike Muscala, Gallinari, and Shamit be damned. They're not rising this tide. We want Koulibaly blocks and steals and goofy shots from Poole and Kuzma, if you will. Anyway, I always love the surprise team segment and picks. Hopefully Alex hits another Cavaliers-like pick with the Spurs this year. 5 stars. Thank you so much for that review. And if you review us on Apple Podcasts with 5 stars, we will read it on the show. Thanks so much for tuning in this week. Enjoy the weekend and the in-season tournament basketball. We will talk to you guys again next week.